Welcome to the Outdoor Sports Club channel. I'm Jake, and this video is very, very different. I did not know that Flat Earth was a real deal. I thought that people were joking. I thought they were just trying to get a rise out of people. I didn't realize that it was a real deal. And I had some fun watching a bunch of Flat Earth videos, and specifically Flat Earth debunking videos, mostly a guy named Simon Dan on YouTube that does a lot of debunking videos. And I was actually, I never thought about it, but it seems like a lot of these flat earthers are using, are either Christian or they're pretending to be Christian or something, and they're using the Bible and weird, like, sort of pseudo connections between the Bible and what they believe to kind of explain it. And it caught me off guard. I was a little bit surprised by it and a little bit annoyed. And I've been bouncing around the idea of doing this video because I really don't want to do this video, but I don't feel like I can help it. And I hope that I make sense in this video. I'm mostly addressing Christians. Now, if you're not a Christian, if you're an unbeliever, an atheist, if you're a different religion, you feel free to keep watching the video. And hopefully this will make sense to you too. Hopefully, feel free to weigh in. But I'm mostly addressing Christians. And I realize not all Christians are like this. But I'm getting very, very frustrated with Christians who are using, for instance, one of the things that they do is they're using the Bible to try to prove or give evidence for something that the Bible doesn't talk about. Before I get too into that, very briefly, I was watching a bunch of Simon Dan's videos. They were kind of funny. I was feeling superior because these guys were being absurd, and it was very easy to break down their arguments and their evidences and things like that, and it was clear that they just didn't understand physics, they didn't understand the way the world worked, etc. And then I realized, wait a minute, I probably need to watch one of these guys' videos and get it from in context, in its entirety, from their mouth, so that I'm giving them a fair chance. Challenge what I believe. Just make sure that I'm seeing both sides here, and that I still come down on the Earth is not flat, which I knew I would. But so that led me to a guy named Eric Dubay and a video called 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. I think he's got a book by the same title out there. Anyway, this is, as I understand it, I think it's kind of a big shot in the flat earth community. And so I thought, yeah, here's a good place to start. That video is, if I remember right, 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 33 seconds long. I watched it all the way through. Then I started over, and I watched it again, pausing, taking notes, backing it up. I took notes on every single one of the 200 proofs. Now, I'm not trying to make fun of Eric Dubay. I'm probably going to make fun of some people in this video. It's sort of unavoidable, because when you say absurd things, then you kind of get made fun of, intentionally or not. I don't think Eric Dubay knows what a proof is. None of them were proofs. If I give him a really big benefit of the doubt on a few very old, not very well documented experiments that were done, that were written in books that he quotes, I could say there were probably 5 or 6 items in his list that were sort of compelling and caused me to go do some research on my own, and I couldn't quite understand exactly the scientific reasons for what was happening, but it kind of made sense. I just didn't fully understand it. Everything else was complete balderdash. If you're a flat earther and you're watching, I'll give you an example. Flat earthers need to stop saying that that if we lived on a ball earth, airplanes would have to dip their nose every few minutes to avoid flying off into space. You can't pretend like you've already proven gravity doesn't exist and then use that as an argument. You just can't do it. It's absurd. So as another example, in case there's flat earthers watching, there was one thing he did a lot was he would take one proof and he would split it, or proof, and he would split it out into like 8 different examples of that proof. So instead of making it one proof and saying here are 8 different examples of it, I'm going to use 8 different examples as 8 different proofs, which doesn't really work. You've got 7 extra proofs there that don't actually count. And one of those actually proved the opposite. It actually was a counter argument. So he said that if you try to fly from I'll just use one of his examples. Santiago, Chile to Johannesburg, South Africa, you can't get a direct flight. It has to go up to Europe first and then down. Now, there are plenty of reasons for that on a round Earth, mostly revolving around profitability for the airline company, efficiency, the fact that there aren't that many people. There's not a huge amount of demand to go direct. There's a lot of demand to go this way and this away, not so much this away. So I'm not going to go deep into detail because that's not what this video is about. But what's the first thing that you would do if somebody said you can't do that and therefore the earth is flat? I don't know. I went and looked up tickets. I think that's the first thing that you should do. The first option, I looked up 3 of the cities and then I quit looking because I knew what I was going to find. I looked up 3 of the examples. The first option in every example was a direct flight. Now, if the earth was flat like he was saying, you couldn't do a direct flight. It wouldn't make any sense at all. So it actually proved the opposite. It proved that the earth was a globe, or gave very strong evidence that the earth was a globe, not flat. And it was his example that led me to that. I'd never even thought to look up those ticket prices. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. So why am I talking to Christians here? Why am I bringing up the Bible? What is this all about? Well, late in 200 Proofs the Earth Isn't a Spinning Ball, he started talking about religions, thinking that the earth was flat and moving. And then he took a scripture grossly out of context, not even close to what the Bible was trying to say, and tried to use that to say, see, the earth is sitting in space, it's not moving, it's not spinning, it's not a ball. See, God even said so, I guess. I'm paraphrasing here. And the idea is, I think where a lot of these guys are coming from is that they think that that if God created the universe, that we're the pinnacle of his creation and therefore we would be the center of it. And so why, and that's so weak, because first of all, if you read the Bible, you find that God doesn't have any trouble, from a Christian perspective. If you're not Christian, this may not make sense, but from a Christian perspective, God doesn't have any trouble with mankind being too humble. So it's always an issue with mankind not being humble enough. So I don't see why God would put us at the center of the universe. That doesn't make any sense to me. So, but that's not necessarily the point. But I think that's where they're coming from. And so this guy, Eric's argument was, well, the Freemasons or whoever wants us to worship the sun and things and worship ourselves so that we don't worship God. Well, again, the Freemasons don't really have to work that hard at it because people really like to worship themselves anyway. So I don't see that there's any need for a great conspiracy anyway. But more to my point, he quoted that and I was like, what? Why is he quoting the Bible to try to prove that the earth is flat? That makes 0 sense. You can't prove the earth is round either using the Bible. So I wound up watching some other guys, and there was some guy that's like pastor something on YouTube. I don't know if he's a real pastor or not, but he clearly doesn't understand how light works, because he thinks that if the sun was really 93 million miles away or whatever it is, that the sun would have to illuminate all of that empty space in between. And I'm thinking, did this guy never shine a flashlight at something in the night? Does he not understand the basics of light? But I think he was a pastor, And then there's this other guy who's a Christian, and he's saying all kinds of absurd, ludicrous stuff about the earth being flat, and so I got frustrated. And I've been toying with this video for like a month. I've shot it. This is probably the 6th time I've shot it. I'm a Christian. And to my knowledge, Simon Dan, who I've watched a lot of his videos, I've learned from him. I think he's really smart. And when it comes to science and physics, I think the dude's probably got a lot of people beat. I think he's an atheist. I hope I'm not misrepresenting him there, but I think he's an atheist. I don't have a problem with that. We're talking about if the earth is round or flat. Okay, I don't need the Bible to do that. Now, I'm not saying that the Bible isn't worth something. I'm not saying that it's useless. This is a spiritual document. Like I said, I'm a Christian, and I think I'm a stronger Christian now than I was ever in my life. Time will tell, I suppose, but this is a spiritual guide. This is about Jesus. It's about salvation. It has some really good advice about some real-world stuff like relationships, finance, work ethic, things like that. But it's not a science textbook. And a lot of Christians, I know some non-flat earthers, people that don't believe the earth is flat, But they look at the creation account in Genesis and they say, see, the earth was made in 6 actual days, and we're only 6,000 years old. And I don't see that. I don't see that. I don't see that the Bible actually says that. Now we're getting into something that Christians debate a lot. But I don't really understand from a scientific perspective how you can have an actual day the way we define it now before the sun and the moon even existed. I don't get that. I don't see it. I've also had Christians argue that, well, if God created Adam with the appearance of age, he could have created the universe with the appearance of age. Well, if you had that power, if you could, again, from a Christian perspective, God creates Adam with the appearance of age. He's not a baby that looks 25. He's actually 25, so he has that age. So if the universe was created from a creator with the appearance of age, then it's that old. It's literally that old. So science still works. And so anyway, this led me to a video where a guy was lumping flat earthers in with creationists, and I understand why he's doing that. But you can be a creationist and believe everything that science tells you, basically. They're not mutually exclusive. They're not incompatible. And a lot of people think that they are incompatible. Now, I don't blame atheists and people in the scientific community for believing that, because Christians for so long have been making it fairly obvious that they can't comprehend both. And they say some of the most absurd things. And so I don't blame any non-believer for saying, yeah, you're a Christian, you're an idiot, you clearly don't understand science, because we've kind of proven that that's the case. So many of us have. The whole point here is, the Bible is a spiritual guide. If, from a Christian perspective, God created the universe, why would he not want us to look at it and try to make sense of it using logic and using the things that we can observe? One of the things I saw on Simon Dan's channel was how they determined how far away the sun was. And I don't remember it exactly. It had something to do with Venus's orbit and measuring the angle to Venus here and here. And things like that. There was more to it than that. It was simple, but it was genius. And it makes sense. It makes complete sense. Why would God have a problem with that? He created the universe, right? From a Christian perspective, he created the universe. And I can talk to a non-believer who doesn't believe in creationism, and they can say, yeah, the universe was created like this and this and this, as far as we can tell. That's what we think. That's the best thing science has to offer. And I say, oh, that's interesting. I don't have to even mention a creator, because I don't know how God works. I don't know how God created the universe. I don't know the mechanisms that he put in place. I think the mechanisms he put in place are observable, and I think that we can make more and more sense of them over time just by observing them. And if you want to compare it to the Bible, for spiritual guidance, we look at the Bible, we try to make sense of it. We try to analyze it, we try to apply it to our lives. If you want to make sense of the universe and the mechanisms of the universe, you look at the universe. Okay? The Bible wasn't intended to do that, but the universe was. So, I love science. I think science is great. I don't always agree with everything that I hear, but if it makes sense, if somebody can explain it to me, awesome. I don't go through the Bible and try to find ways to prove the science wrong, because the Bible wasn't written to do that, right? It was written to teach me how to live my life the best that I can for myself and for the people around me, and it's a spiritual guide. It's about Jesus. Like I said, it's about Jesus. So if you're talking about spiritual stuff, awesome. But if you're talking about the moon revolving around the earth and the earth revolving around the sun, there's really nothing in there for that. In fact, there's some really, really beautiful things in the Bible that make a lot more sense the more you understand about science for real. So the way the universe works for real, the more you understand about that, the more analogies you can draw out of the Bible, the more symbolism you can draw out of the Bible. It makes more sense, and it's more beautiful than it is if you think that the earth is flat. It's absurd, and Christians, you've really got to start trying to understand the things you're talking about more and use the Bible for what it was intended for, and use other things for what they were intended for. Don't use the wrong tool for the wrong job, or even the right tool for the wrong job. You've got to be better than that, because you're pushing people away. If your goal is to bring people to Christ, the last thing you want to do is say something in front of someone who's on the fence to an unbeliever, or even say something to an unbeliever that proves that you don't care enough to go do the research. Like saying that an airplane has to dip its nose down every few minutes or it flies off into space. Do a little bit of research, and if your argument falls apart to the slightest bit of scrutiny, you're pushing people away. So I prove my ignorance all the time. Sometimes I open my mouth when I shouldn't. I may have even done so in this video. I have a feeling I'm going to make a lot of people mad on both sides of the fence with this video, but I felt like I had to do it because God doesn't want you out there trying to defend him with ignorance. Check out what you're trying to say, what you're trying to argue. Try to do some research. If you don't know, ask, and go into these conversations with more of a learner attitude instead of a teacher attitude. If somebody comes to you for spiritual guidance, bust that Bible out. Talk about your hope in Jesus Christ. Do what you can spiritually. Hopefully that makes sense. It's weird, I know. And just so you guys know, I'm Christian. A lot of the guys that are in the videos on this channel are Christian. They don't all believe the same way I do, okay? We get along great. I've had great conversations with atheists where we both left disagreeing, but we were respectful of each other. I actually like talking to atheists as long as I can be respectful and they can be respectful. It's all good. We don't have to hate each other, And Christians, if an atheist hates you because you're a Christian, okay, walk on. There's nothing you can do about that. But if you're hating a Christian, or if you're hating an atheist because they're an atheist, you're not doing your job. Okay, don't worry about the way they're acting. You're not doing your job. That's more of the point that I'm trying to generate here. Hopefully this is convicting to Christians. To non-Christians, hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully, if you have questions, ask. I'll try my best to explain it. I'm not the best at getting all the tangled up words in my head out, but hopefully it makes some sense. So thanks for watching, and take care. Even you flat earthers, as absurd as you are, take care, be safe. Thanks.